So I appreciate Philip making me follow up like 5,000 years of perfect design with a presentation on something that I am trying to show you. It's kind of tough to follow. Obviously, we're here to talk about the drawings. I just would like to kind of build on what we were talking about earlier. And first of all, take a look at the kind of drawings that we're doing. This is what we were calling the orbital dial, or the site plan. And the purpose of this drawing is to tell us a couple things, more about your orbit. This is the one source that we'll know in terms of you, the designer, what is day and what is night in your cycle. It's also going to give us an orientation of your section cuts. So this is the top orbital dial, and it has the 5 section cuts laid in there as they are, with the 5 chosen of the 24 there on that one. So that's one kind of drawing we're going to talk about constructing, and we're going to run through. The second is the plan view. Plan view is obviously a plan view. So the limits of this drawing are the 20 by 20 limits of your physical model. They're going to line up 1 to 1, kind of straightforward drawing. The other drawing is the section drawing that we're going to be doing as well. Section drawing and the plan drawing are kind of, in terms of construction, almost the same drawing, with the difference that with the section drawing, we're asking you to show us the appropriate light ray at that section, right? So this is the corresponding ray on the dial. Also showing us how it interacts with your structure through a kind of limited but very kind of readable language. In terms of this simple example, has the solid, meaning direct light, the dashed meaning diffuse light or transformed light, and just using those 2 methods, whether or not it goes through changed or unchanged, or it goes through at all, is going to tell us whether objects are opaque, transparent, or translucent in a kind of quick manner. The white and the black are just for graphic terms in terms of seeing up against the background, but the real kind of information is on the line weight. It's also going to give us a nice sense of scale with the addition of the entourage in it. So I think when you look at drawings like this, the important thing is to realize that it comes into the editing of it. There's a lot of extraneous information. Anyone that's dug in at all to their Rhino model will be able to attest to that. There's a lot of geometry flying around right now, right? And so the point is to actually edit it down to something that's readable and legible with consistent graphic languages that we can really read a multitude of different sections out of a complex object and get something out of it worthwhile, right? That's a kind of, I would say, the foundation of any kind of good drawing. If it can't do that, I'm really not really worried about anything after that, any kind of flourishes or anything like that, if it doesn't make kind of basic sense. And I kind of would encourage you to do these drawings in the sense that you do your model and construct them, kind of treat them that way. If you understand the logic of the drawing and how it's put together in Rhino and any kind of source of digital geometry, bringing it into something like Illustrator should only be kind of like the icing on the cake. You shouldn't be manipulating geometry. You shouldn't be editing geometry. You shouldn't be trying to divide curves in Illustrator, using the pen tool. These are all colossal wastes of time, right? You have a CAD-based model. It is far more accurate and far easier to edit in terms of geometry. We're giving it the paint job in Illustrator. So those are the 2 things, one of the 2 things I want to get across. This, I feel, is a high amount of work in the amount of time you're given. So you can either work systematically and go through it smoothly, or if you try to do some kind of shortcut and freestyle and go off the reservation, you're going to end up flailing around and treading water too much. So I really encourage you to be kind of organizational about it. If you are, you can turn out a new set of drawings in a night easily, no matter what the level that you are. That's giving you buffer time for maybe your computer crashing or something like that. So I've really tried to kind of streamline that process and let you kind of understand some of the logic behind constructing drawings. So I'm going to hop into the template for a second. This is a used version of the template that I just showed you those drawings with, but your template is gonna start off empty. And these are the 9 drawings aligned, and we'll talk about the kind of nuts and bolts of them already, but it's one Illustrator file. That's what you're starting off with, right? Not too dissimilar from before. The other thing that you're gonna have is a Rhino file that jumps off from where we left off before. It's exactly where we left off when we made the model with the spokes. I believe the last thing that we did was that. This other element that we're going to distribute to the class as a whole is a additional model that has intermediate geometry to help you go through the drawing quicker. So the idea is to make it as seamless as possible to go from content to delivery of the drawings without getting caught up in any kind of technical issues, if possible, and to kind of appreciate the kind of clarity that comes with that. So this drawing setup is going to be a Rhino model. I've got it in my model right now, but it's basically just going to be a Rhino model that you would just use the import command and bring into your existing model. And that just has extra stuff for you to build on. It has some empty layers. It has some other objects in it. So beyond kind of my one goal for you being not to manipulate any geometry, any curves in Illustrator. The other one is to do not really 9 drawings, but do 3 drawings, in the sense that you're going to do your plan drawing as one, you're going to do your other orbit dials as another drawing, but you're going to treat it as one drawing. You're going to do it all at the same time to cut down on busy work. And then you're going to do your 5 sections as one drawing. So that's the way the kind of construction of it set up. A smart construction like that, you don't want the redundancy. You're not changing graphic conventions across these drawings, and you're not changing any of the layers or anything like that. So do 3 drawings in that sense, and that's the kind of second takeaway from it. So that's kind of set up that way. This main layer has the drawing setup layer has those kind of pieces that set you up. So the first one that we're going to look at is the orbital drawing. I've got a layer here for marker dots, and I can't remember off the top of my head, do we add those annotation dots onto this spoke yet or not? I'm going to do them whether or not, just to kind of remind you of what they did. So that's just simply going in and doing an annotation dot. And assigning my numbers. It's kind of easier to do it in a plan view. I believe this is number 1. And I'm not going to make you sit through me doing 24 of this, but it's just a matter of repeating that command. So I'm going to import a file that has those already done. So that's just a matter of doing 24 annotation dots on there.
You recording that?
Mm-hmm. I just remember where I put things. So I've got my annotation dots in there. The next thing that I need for this particular model is the text numbers that I need to have. Just like when we did the orbit drawings, the dots aren't going to come across, so we're going to want text versions of that. I've got specific layers on here, so if we look at site and I look at top, there's a layer for text, and that's where I'm going to do the convert dot command that we used before to convert it to text. So I'm just going to run that command. To select the dots to convert, these are the only dots of my model, so I can just go ahead and type select dot in there and hit OK. Make sure my output is text and my delete input is no. So I've added that on the current layer. So I'm going to turn off my dots for a second. And it actually came on my current layer, so I'm going to do a select text to grab those text objects that I made. Yeah, so maybe I bumped out of my command by mistake. Let's do my convert dot again. Oh yeah, switched it too many times. Come on, let me switch. There we go. Cool. What it's got down there are some just basic labels that we're going to use to mark where the drawings actually show up. So I'm going to change that layer to top text. And basically, when I do these drawings, I'm going to do it the same in all three projections. I'm going to do the same thing in the right, and then I'm going to do the same thing in the front. And I'm not going to do it here to save time, but that's when you run it through, just repeat that process for the other ones. There's specific layers for that, okay? That's the one element I need. I don't need a lot of elements for this one. The other element that I do need, and I can turn off my waffle structure because this drawing is all about the intersection with the actual object, and this is this drawing without the site, is I want to have a graphic scale, and I've got layers of that put in there too. So in my top, I've got the three possible scales that this could be. And I'm going to turn on, at this point you should know what your scale is, and you're just going to pick whatever that scale is. So I've done some measurements on this model. I've decided that I'm going to go with a quarter scale, so I'm going to turn off the other two layers. And this is basically just a placeholder for me to know how big my model is going to be once it's into Illustrator. It's just to kind of let me know how I'm going to scale it up, right? So just make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay, so this is all the information that I need for one of these drawings, actually. I've got my orbit, I've got the spokes, I've got the object. I have offset thicknesses on this object. We could talk about that in a little bit when it comes to sections. I don't need that for this model. So when I go back to my massing volume, I'm going to turn off the offsets. I'm only looking in this drawing to the outside of the model. So I don't need to have that extra information in there. I just need this stuff. So I'm going to select it. I'll do my make 2D. And I ran it too quick and I exited out of the options there, so I hit enter by mistake one too many times. I need my prompt. For this one, we don't want, we do want the hidden lines. So I need to turn those on. Okay. Not too different than our orbit drawings, except now we've got the object placed in here. The first thing that I want to do is I want to go to Make 2D, the output layer of my drawing, and I'm going to change it. I want to change it to something a little bit more descriptive because with my three different kinds of drawings, I don't want overlapping information. If I run Make 2D again right now, it's going to start overlapping and I have different amounts of information. So that's going to be the first move when I do my three drawings. And I'm going to do the Make 2D two more times. So I'm going to do the Make 2D again and again, and all three of it are going to go on this drawing dials layer. Okay, we're going to kind of treat that all as the same drawing. So if you can imagine, my front and my right are going to work the same way. I've got graphic scales for those two. So when you go down here, you can turn on the right. I would turn on the graphic scale for the right at 1/4. This is my front view, so let me get on my right view. And you can see there's one down there, and there's also one provided on the other one. So I can have those in all three of my drawings. So with those in hand, the next step is to scale it down. Okay. I did kind of visual to fitting into my drawing. So what I did, and then when I remeasured it, it was about 1/8 of the size of my original one to fit it in there. This is to fit it. It's not necessarily at a set scale. We can use a visual scale to show it. So I'm just going to use that number. But how I originally did it was just to visually fit it in with the curved boolean, and then I did some measurements, and it was about 1/8. So I'm going to hold down Shift on my gumball, and I'm going to type in 1/8 on the gumball scale box there to get it down to there. You can see I've got a teeny tiny graphic scale at that point, but that's okay because as long as it's accurate, right? I'm not gonna go forward to it. So this is the setup. I'm going to rescale this one. You can these little names here are just kind of reminders of where to put stuff. Built into those layers that you were given are these 10 kind of placeholders that are separated by type. And this is basically where you're going to export stuff out of it. So maybe I take this one and I scoot it down. So what we want to kind of make sure of right now is that a couple things. We want to make sure that we've got all the information for our drawing that we need. We also want to make sure we don't have any extra stuff. If we can do any kind of cleaning up, now's a good time to do that. So when I look at my drawing dials, I've got a little bit of clutter here. Not too bad. I've got the graphic scale. I'm not really worried about that because I'm going to ditch it later. But what I'm trying to prevent is to have like 1,000,000 layers in Illustrator. When I bring it in, it's not going to recognize sublayers. So every one of these is going to be a unique layer. So if you can kind of clean it up a little bit first, you won't be having to sort through so many, right? For instance, I'm not worried about the hidden lines of the massing volume, right? So I can delete that. I'm only worried about the hidden lines of the spokes. For the volume, I'm only worried about the visible lines, right? So things like, well, I've got a drawing set up. All this stuff is all just to accommodate that graphic scale. I'm using 5 layers coming in Illustrator for that graphic scale. So instead of doing that, I can right-click it and say, select sublayer objects. That picks that scale, and I can change object layer, right? That allows me to delete those sublayers. And now it's just on that layer called drawing setup, which is vague, so I can just rename it graphic scale. Even beyond the kind of time-saving thing, it's also a matter of not being confused by having an overabundance of layers to juggle. I've got visible lines. My visible lines are pertaining to my massing volume, so I can do the same thing here. Project C3 on the orbital dial as well. The orbital dial has my spokes and my orbit. So that's okay for me. I can have those two separate on 2 separate layers. The only hidden lines I'm worried about, again, are on the orbital dial. So if I look here and I right click and say select objects, there's not even any objects on this layer now, so I delete that and get rid of it. All right, so now I'm going to select my sublayer objects. This is looking pretty good. This has the parts that I want. I've got my orbit, the original orbit, right? I've got the spokes, I've got the numbers. I've got 2 sets of numbers, so I'm going to do a select duplicates, SELDUP. I only got, oh, that's the one I made originally. Okay, cool. Get rid of that. Don't want any extra stuff. If I had more stuff, it would tell me up here in my history. And you want to get rid of any duplicate stuff before you bring it into your drawing. It's just asking for trouble. So my graphics card will catch up here. So now I'm actually ready to get this out of here. Forgot one thing, one important thing. when we look at the drawing, we want to denote what's day and night, right? That's a lot of work to try to do in Illustrator. One kind of quick way we can do it, and you'll also notice that we don't want to interfere too much with the object itself. We're going to let the hidden lines do that, meaning these lines are going in long enough that we know at some point that's nighttime. And once it hits that mass in the middle, we can let the mass stand out to kind of give us a reference, right? So if I zoom in and it'll print darker, keep in mind, those axes are just going to go into the nexus point, and we can still see the overall silhouette of our model. So that's something that we want to do in Rhino. In this model, I'm going to add a sublayer, and I'm going to call it hour cells, just because they're little cellular kind of representations of what hour it is. I'm going to move that up to the top. That's going to sit at the top of my drawing. Okay? And I'm going to use the curve boolean command to create closed curves. And later on in Illustrator, I'll just fill those in. So I'll do curve. And curve edit tools, I'll do a curve boolean. For select curves, I'm going to pick all of them. It's okay if I pick that extra stuff by mistake. I can always control it if I'm not worried about this guy either, but it's not going to hurt me because I'm not going to be over there. What I want to have is just the mass and the spokes and the orbit. I don't want to delete input, and I don't want to combine any regions. I want little separate cells, right? And then I'm just going to go in and click in. In this one, I would actually want to keep it, my orbit, right? I'm going to present that as solid, and it's going to tuck behind it. I'm going to go back in there and combine it later. I don't want to turn it on combine yes just for that one. And I'm basically, with this tool, maybe sometimes the first click doesn't work, it doesn't register. So if you click and nothing happens, don't assume there's a problem. Click it a couple times, because sometimes it'll happen on the third or fourth one. It's just wherever it's deciding to register the click mark, and it has to go check with the graphics card. So don't sweat it if the first time. It's like on the first time I clicked there, nothing happened. So it's bound to happen to you. And I'm basically just going around the massing of my project. Like that. Okay. But I'm trying to remember if that was part of my model or not. Nope, that's right. So I hit, let's see if I can get this one. Yep, I had to fight for it. This one I'm not too concerned about because the thickness of the lines are going to eat up that gap there. And hit OK. So now on that layer, I've got a bunch of closed cells that are happening. The other thing that I can do now, and I want to do now, is I want to separate them into day and night. So instead of going and picking them out manually, if I put them on separate layers right now, I'll make a sublayer called light, and I'll make another sublayer called dark. Right? And really kind of quickly, what I did was I looked at my 3D model and I looked and saw where the light was actually hitting it and where it was hitting my landscape, and that's how I picked my two. And you know what worked for what came out for me was mine goes, it starts around 2, the daytime, and it stops around 14. And that's my kind of day cycle. It does a ribbon around here, and that's actually where I cut my sections because that's where I had the most exposure to the sun in my case. So that way I can start with 2. And I'm just going to grab it. I can lock the scaled orbit layer, so I'm not picking that by mistake. And I'm just grabbing the cells that I made, kind of ignoring the orbit one. because we're doing a flat projection, it's fine to cut some of these cells off if they visually get cut off. It's not, there's no kind of transparency to this drawing, so it just has to meet the kind of projection amount. But I think I bit off too much here. Because I'm only going up to 14. So those are my light ones in there, like that. Take this one along too. So these are the ones I'm going to make white, take that on, change my object layer, turn that off for a sec. If I turn off my hour spokes, you can start to see what's being left behind there. And that's leaving me with the dark ones. Right, so I'm going to change my object layer and put it on there. Looks like I got a dark one there. You can put objects on, layers that are off, which is always good because it kind of lets you know what's getting put away and what's not. This is a little day one that's hanging out there, so I'm going to put it on the light side. So now I'm actually ready to export it. Now I've got this stuff on several layers. Make sure you turn that stuff back on. I'm going to turn my spokes back on. I'm going to unlock my orbit curve. Definitely want to do that. So that's not going to, any locked object's not going to come along for the ride on the export. So I'm going to select objects. I want to do select sublayer objects. And I also want to grab the boundary so I can line it up later. So then I'm going to export it. Call it demo. Leave the scale the way it is. It's already at 10 by 10. I want to do an RGB. It's fine. Okay. So I'm going to go back into Illustrator. I'm going to open it up. Hit update on that. Take a look at my layers real quick. It's going to kind of do whatever kind of shuffle it feels like doing. So I want to start arranging these in the proper order. I can either do that now or I can do it when I bring it into my template. It's not going to make a difference. I'm going to take my my text and I'm going to move it up to the top. So that's coming in under the text there. That's going up top. I want my cells on the bottom there. My spokes, I'm going to keep around. I'm going to turn off later, but I'm going to just keep as kind of a reference in case I need them later, in case something happens, I have them there. So because of that, I'm going to put them down at the bottom. The frame for the whole drawing goes at the very bottom. The massing for my my model itself, that's going to go up to top. My hidden lines for the spokes, are fine right there. My graphic scale I can put anywhere because I'm going to get rid of it later. So my scaled orbit I want to have underneath my cells, and I'll kind of explain why that is later. So the other important thing that I want to do is I want to create a top layer. And keep in mind, I'd be doing this for all three right now. I'd be bringing them in and just doing the arrangement for all layers, so I'd have three of them now. And I'm going to call it orbit dials. I'm going to make a master layer, and I'm going to put everything in it. Okay. So I'm going to pick all that stuff by clicking my circle there. I'm going to save what I've done in this particular drawing. Whenever you do a lot of copy and pasting, you want to make sure you save pretty often, because every once in a while your memory might bug out, and Illustrator definitely is not beyond crashing when you're working on something important. So I'm going to go back into the template now, and I'm going to paste it in there. So it's coming in under orbit dials. I'm popping it into the drawings layer. Right? I've got a layer here just for drawings on the template. And then I'm going to move my object over to the first spot. It's going to kind of smart track right to there. I'm going to turn my, my guides off for a second. And, you know, I could at this point take a look at my object here, and if I take off the frame, I'm allowed to move everything. I can kind of orient this a little bit better. And right now it's kind of eating up my title. And that looks about good. Now's the time where I can start moving my text around. I think what you want to try and think of as a convention is it's all about clarity. So if I can keep these off of there whenever possible, it's not going to be eaten up. We're going to do our text as a grayscale color. That's fine for hitting the black, but there's plenty of negative space wrapped around this orbit that I should not worry about using negative space if I've got it right. So I'm kind of moving these out. And if I was going to grade it on something like this, I would definitely spend more time adjusting it, but I don't want to bore you guys with me moving numbers around. I've got, this is our little guy here. This is why we kept him around. We've got a reference to use for him. I'm going to group them so I can grab them easier. Okay. Right now you've got these kind of placeholder scales here. So you can use that to try and kind of gauge how big you need to make this scale. And basically what I did was I used the transform. I go into object and I do transform and I do scale. And I'd say I'll try like 200%, keeping in mind that right now, right, when I look at it right now, that little half square is a foot, right? So if I scale it up, I've got to kind of keep that in mind, that now that little half square is 2 feet right now. And as I move it up, as I get something that I can actually reference it at, all of a sudden I've got something, if I remember what the number is, I can just relate it to here. So I'll do it again. Now this little sector is 4 feet, right? So long story short, as I kept scaling this one up, it comes to around 16 feet in my particular case. So I go in here and I just change that to 16. Oops, sorry. Now, I'm doing this for all three drawings. So if I use that, same scaling factor, like in my case it was 800 for all three drawings, I don't have to go through this part again. I just changed my other two drawings to that scale, just punch in the same number. But if I've got a weird orbit, and there's no such thing as a non-weird orbit from looking at these things, right? So it's like, you want a good drawing, and it's okay if you want to scale it up some, right? We're not aligning them in the same way like we were with like the transparencies, right? So it's okay. That's why we have a graphic scale. Does that make sense? There's a lot of numbers flying around, so these three ones are all scaled for the drawing.
Is it possible for, after you scale it, for there to be like a little bit of a remainder, like not exact whole numbers?
Yeah, so actually when I did this, that's a good thing I forgot to point out so far. When I did it, it came up a little short. So what I did is I moved this line over. And I moved these other paths and things over to match it. So if I go into the direct selection, if you take a look at the example, and you know what I'm going to do is provide like PNGs of those 3 examples. This guy's nudged over a little bit because of that. Yeah, error on the whole numbers more than like 16.35 is that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And that's what I did. It kind of came over to about that. So so I just did that, and I just made 2 of them like that, and called it a day. And that works. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, good question. There's a lot of info. So if I forget something, I apologize. When I give you the Rhino file, the notes panel will have step-by-step instructions that are like really detailed and talk about some stuff. There might be some stuff in there that I jumped over by mistake or something because I might have forgotten to talk about it. So make sure you read those notes, but it'll be exactly in the same order, and it walks through these steps and all that good stuff. So I've got a scale for my drawing. Great. This is already set up for me up here, my orientation. I leave that alone. I go down here, you know, you want to definitely let me know who it is. That's about the only real text I've got to worry about changing. And then I can get into doing my line weight. So if I go to my drawing and look at the orbital dials, I've got, this is all my text on that top layer there. That's going to be at 11, and we're going to provide all this info for you. Only 3 colors in this whole set of drawings: black, white, and a shade of gray. The shade of gray is the 204. It's this one right here in RGB mode. That's going to be the color of the text. All text in the whole thing. There's no variance on that. It's really kind of straightforward. So we've got it that side. Section markers are there provided for you. So I'll show you how to move one of theirs. So to go into the other layers, we've got some more stuff. This is all expanded because when you open up Illustrator, everything just opens up on you. So let me close that. Don't be intimidated. We've got the massing volume. The massing volume is going to be 2 in black. It's going to be the thicker. It's the only object with a 2 point on it on the entire thing. I'm sorry. It's that and the orbit itself, the actual scaled orbit curve. That's at 2 points as well. That's a little bit thicker to arrive at like a boundary for us. So you can see that one just got a little bit thicker. Moving on to the cells, we picked the dark cells. So I'm going to pick both layers of cells because they're both going to have a stroke of 0.5. But my dark cells are going to be colored black. And they're going to have a white stroke on them. Whereas my other cells, my light cells, are going to be the opposite of that. They're going to be with the black stroke, which they've already got at 0.5, and I'm going to give it a white fill on that. Okay? Again, like this is enabled by making those extra curves in Rhino. I'm not going through there and really trying to paint this thing in Illustrator. It'd be like a total frustrating endeavor. But this thing is ordered up the right way. Even caught a mistake. I meant to get rid of that guy. I was going to do a curve boolean. Luckily, he's a separate curve, and I can just take him and build him into it. Actually, he's not, so I'm going to have to do some fudging with that guy. Actually, what I would do is go back and do the curve boolean and pop it right on top, illustrate it, and bring that one curve out. You can do like a real small Rhino model, one curve, export it, paste it back in there. It'd be quicker than trying to go in there with the pen tool and eat it up that way. But you're going to get these little idiosyncrasies like that with every thing, and it's a drawing convention. So we're kind of treating this as an opaque object. It would be kind of confusing otherwise. You kind of have to realize that it's light going on top of dark, right? But it's a line drawing, so we're still seeing some of the spokes underneath it. It's kind of telling us what time of day it is. I'm going to go back into my layers. I've got that much done. My hour spokes are there, and I do need them in my case because those are the hidden ones. I'm going to move the visible ones above the hidden ones because they actually puncture my object. So when I pick those, they've got a stroke point of 1. That's fine. I'm gonna leave that at 1. Believe I leave that at 1. Leave it at 0.5. I've got a cheat sheet here that you guys are gonna have. I don't know nothing that you're not gonna know. Got that. And the last thing I want to check out, I want to check out my hidden lines for my spokes, because they're going to be kind of sitting underneath the middle of the drawing. And I'm going to change that to my 204 gray color, and that's a 0.52. So very light line weights in this drawing because it's a small drawing. You're not going to be looking at this drawing from a long distance. You're going to be up on it. There's a lot of information that we're trying to fit in a small amount of space. That's a call for smaller line weights and really kind of precise work, right? So you can see the illustrator part being a fraction of the Rhino part, and it's just switching, grabbing objects. I'm not grabbing objects themselves, I'm grabbing the layers. I'm not trying to grab objects, I'm trying to grab layers and apply it to the whole layer. Once you know what section you've picked, you can grab a section marker and start applying those. We're doing our sections clockwise in the top view. They're all going to have the same orientation. That way, when you look at your drawings as a series, they're all facing the same direction. So for me, it's going to be over to the right. And I've done the section that I've picked. It starts with, it's like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm going to show you how I would do the marker for the fourth one, which would be 9 o'clock hour. I'm going to go in, I'm going to take my number 4 marker. I know that it's talking about right now this spot. This is the spoke that it's talking about because that's where the number got left off in Rhino. So I can delete that number and I'm going to replace it with a section marker. These section markers are a dual layer group. So the one group is the whole marker. When you go into the group, there's the number and then the geometry underneath. The reason that is because I can rotate the underneath geometry without rotating the number, but I can also move the whole marker without losing it and keeping it centered. So if you're not comfortable with groups, just like practice clicking on them and keeping track of what level you're in. There's 2 levels to it. So if right now I don't want to rotate the whole thing because I'm going to rotate the number. I want to go into the group. So when I double click, it gets this funky kind of gray shade going on and I'm in the group. Now I've got 2 objects. I've got number and I've got group of objects. So that's when I take the group of objects and I can rotate it independently of the number. It's going to move around a lot because this isn't a perfectly symmetrical object. It's got this kind of triangle on the top. So I'm just going to adjust it. What I'm worried about is I'm lining it up with that spoke. So there's my spoke. That looks pretty good. Check my number. That actually looks okay. In this case, my section's doing a weird thing. It's going to my right on the screen, and then my sections here are going to turn to the left, but then it comes back again. So my sections are facing the right again. This is happening. You know, your dog collar is a 3-dimensional object, so kind of keep that in mind. Your spokes want to have the same orientation. A lot of this stuff, when I was trying to do it, constantly checking my perspective view and saying, okay, this makes sense now. Like, this is how it's happening in space. Not always trusting a projection of it. And basically, you can see in the final product that I just did the same thing for the other 5. So I'm not going to make you sit through that, but it's taking a group, rotating the object, not the number, right? Does that make sense on the section markers? Again, could you make your own section markers? Absolutely. I'm just trying to clear the way to get to the content sooner, so we don't have to sit and design in our sketchbook different section markers and we have discussions at your desk about it. It's not that I obviously like that kind of stuff, but there's better uses of your time at this point with the amount of time that we have left. So section markers are on there. I go back here. I'm pretty much done that drawing. And I repeat that process for the other 2 at the same time. Remember, when I did, when I grab, like and this is why we're doing it this way, when I grab all the dark cells, you're going to have all 3 drawings done. It's going to grab the dark cells for all 3 drawings. It's going to grab the light cells for all 3 drawings. So you're only going to have to do this one time if you keep it lined up. So at that point, in this time, a third of your drawings are done. I mean, it's not too bad. It just kind of is the organization up front. Any questions on this drawing or any of that stuff so far? We can do questions at the end too to not make like a mile-long video. But how about we do like a quick break so you guys can breathe a little bit, for like 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about the other parts of the drawings. Cool. Thanks, guys. We'll keep them. I think this is going right. Okay, make sure it's recording. I won't waste it. Okay, it's recording. But we've got the issue of thickness that's different in this one, and we kind of talked about it a little bit before. And it is the issue of when you first make your object, it's like that. It's all one mass, right? And if you want to start giving it thicknesses, the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that it's a closed solid. Something like this is not going to be a closed solid. If I look at its properties, it's open. And it's open because of these shared edges that are happening down here. These are non-manifold. So what happens is it wants to close it up, but it has one edge to share for 2 different shapes. And it doesn't, what it does is one takes it, and the other one is left open, even though it looks closed. And it's just all kind of joined together, glued, but it's not one closed thing. What you want to do is you want to treat it as 4 closed poly surfaces. So I look at this one. It's 4 closed ones. The way to do it, and if you're not sure what's going on, you can analyze it by turning on your edge tools and saying show edges. And if I look at these 2 different ones, and I tell it to look at non-manifold edges, I've got them right here, right? So it's where these are colliding, and I don't have them here. It's not showing up in orange. So the fix on that is to take them, and you just want to explode them and rejoin them separately. And that way they won't worry about all being one object. They'll be able to be closed onto its own, and it won't be concerned with sharing an edge with something else. Now, as you keep building and you kind of make this thing more substantial, you're not going to have these kind of edges anymore as often. You're going to be bridging things and stuff. But it's good to know why this is happening and why if I try to offset it right now, it won't work. Okay? So now that I've got them all broken up, I'm just going to pick the ones that all touch each other. So I'll take a look at this one here, and I'll join it. And looks like it's joined into one open poly surface, which means I'm missing a piece, and it's this little one right here. Actually, there's 2 of them right there. So I'll rerun the join command. It looks like they're still apart. Left this one behind. Okay, cool. Hard to tell what's picked and what's not. One surface added to selection, so ooh, still open. Show me the edges on this one. I took it from the other one. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna extract that surface. And I'm gonna move it back to where it belongs. This one's open. So if you have an open one that looks like it's okay, like for this one it looks like it's closed, you want to say copy no. That way it'll get rid of that one. And if it's flat, you can try to cap it. It might not be planar. This one was flat, so the cap worked, and now it's closed. And I just go and I try to grab these other ones, and I try to join them back up. And you always want to check your, when it tells you it's closed up here, you know you've got it. You can see that the orange is starting to go away the minute that you do that. And I'm just trying to be careful. That one's closed, and then finally that one's closed. So now they're all closed, which is basically what I've got here. If I move this back down to the right spot, and I want to start giving my object, let's say I want to give it a thickness moving forward when you're actually getting into it. It's the one thing that's a little different about this project is that you're modeling at a scale right now. This was met up for your model, and typically in digital modeling you always want to model at 100%. You don't want to model at a scale. But we've kind of created this context, and it works for us. So just kind of keep that in mind. So if I want to, remember I'm doing a quarter scale, right? If I want a wall thickness that's relevant to a foot, I would do a 1/4 of an inch. So if I want to start giving this object a thickness, that's what I would do. And I can, with this being closed up now, I can do that by using the offset surface command. You get all these crazy normal arrows. They're just asking you what direction. So this is out. You've got two options, in or out. So if I click flip all, now they're going in. These are still going out because they're on corners, but don't let that bother you. So corner equals sharp. That means anytime it sees something like this on the inside, in my case, it's going to make a corner that looks like it. If you do smooth, it's going to round it. So I'm going to do sharp. I want it to look like the outside. Solid equals yes. For my distance, I'll try 0.25. Maybe went a little thick, maybe a foot's too much, or maybe I'll do like a 0.125. So I'll do it again with something a little bit. It's going to be hard to see at first because it's all inside. You've got all these enclosed objects, but if you kind of look at it carefully, you can see that I've got two closed poly surfaces. So we've got thickness now to this kind of enclosed thing. And if I were to slice it through, when we do that, you'll be able to see that. I've already got one in place here with about half that thickness. So I did the exact same thing. I kind of cleaned it up, and my masking volume has a offsets layer, and that's where I put that same stuff that I just showed you guys. It's right there. So it's a little smaller, maybe 3/4 or something like that. Okay. Was this conversation though helpful or make sense in terms of like doing your offset? If you try to do it in any of these situations, like it's open or non-manifold, you're just going to get an error and it's going to say the offset fails. So my advice is also try it with a smaller, easier object first to make sure it's working, instead of trying to do it with something that's really complex. Once you start doing your subdivisions, you've already got the tools to do that. So if you've done it in your physical model, you go into your digital one, you can use tools like split and things like that to start breaking these things up and giving the inner partitions. You use the same command, offset surface, and then you can just union these things together. So I could put a wall in there, give it a thickness, and union it together. Now I've got a wall going through this space like that as well. Or popping one off and offsetting in it as well. So there's also a good command called shell, which is working kind of what it sounds like. What it requires though is that you remove a surface, and when it removes its surface, it looks at that surface. So if I were to remove this surface at the top here, it would treat that and look at it and look at its direction. and say, well, that's the direction that I'm going to make this object. Okay, so I'll run that command. I'll do a shell, and I'll pick a face to remove from it. Let my catch up here. Come on. There we go. I'll say thickness. I'll do it to that other value that we found. So what that did is it popped up and used that thickness the way we want it and used the missing surface as the direction for the thickness. So it'll be that. That kind of keeps your corners from going in crazy different directions because they don't know what direction to go to when you're missing and stuff like that. That's going to be good if you want to do an aperture that stays true to your existing geometry and you don't want kind of weird results popping out of that. So that's the shell command. So I've got my object intact there. That's the kind of conversation I just want to have before we talk about doing the drawing itself. So for the drawing itself, it's not going to have a ton of inputs in this plan drawing. We're not going to look at the orbits. We're going to be looking, and I can turn off my drawing of the dials here because what we're kind of going to be looking at, go up here and turn it off. Is the landscape and the object itself. Those are some test geometries I've got. So I'm going to go back into my, I've got copies of my boundary object still on my horizon, and I've got copies of my original poly surface that I've got as well, which is this one right here. So I'm going to turn off the curves. This was my original one. It's got the separation out of it. And what I still have is that top poly surface. Do you remember back when I did that method of making it go and then splitting the cube? I have that. If you use the other method, you might not have that exact surface that slices through like that. If that's the case, you can just make your own. So I've got a layer here called top poly surface for topo lines, because what we want to do is we want to make a topo lines for our top surface. So in the plan view, we'll have topography lines in our drawing. That's where these gray lines are coming from. So we're going to do that part. So I can use that extract surface to do that. I'm just going to do extract surface. I'm going to pick the stuff that's on the top of my landscape here. And I want to double check in the top view that I'm not missing anything. So I'm going to turn on shade it and make sure I've got all my landscape up here and there's not any odd little parts. Anything that's going inside or tucked underneath my model, I'm not concerned about because it's not going to show up in the drawing. I'm only worried about that surface before that chunk that's cut out. I can make that other stuff, but it's just not going to show up in my drawing anyway because I'm not going to do hidden lines in my drawing, so I'm not going to waste my time. Now I'm going to set copy equals yes on that one, and now I should have original or this kind of surface already. That's going to give me a bunch of individual surfaces, so 6 open surfaces. I want to join it. So I've got one open poly surface. It'll just make it easier and less likely for me to lose something along the way. So I've got that. I'm going to check on it and say, well, that's up in an old layer now. So I'm going to go to my layers and change it to that layer, change object layer. Now I can take that off. This is what I'm worried about in my top view that I've got right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is make my contours. Now, I think that's where I had the foot number because we do want to do our contours at a foot separation. So again, If you're doing it at a 3/16, then you're going to enter 3/16. If you're doing a quarter, half a half, mine's a quarter, so my contour lines are going to be a quarter of an inch away from each other. Contours are just like when we did the waffle stuff, we're just going to do them vertically. And you tend to want to start at the top and go down with contours in this example. So run my contour command. I'm going to join my curves by plane, and this looks okay. I'm going to pick my poly surface. That's the only thing I'm doing a contour for. And my base point. I'm going to go in my front viewport and pick the high point here. And I can use my smart track to go to the low point. And I'm holding down shift, so I'm going in a straight line. My distance is 0.25 because I'm at quarter scale. That's it, contour lines. So that you want to make sure they're on the right layer. There are my contours, that's good. One more element for the drawing. So there's not too much new stuff going into the drawing geometry-wise. That's the only new stuff. What we need to actually get this drawing going is the clipping plane, because that's going to actually give us the plan drawing that we need. For that, I'm going to kind of use this as a reference, this object here. I'm not going to cut through it, but I want to show you how to kind of think about the clipping plane. It's going to be just like a section, but we're going to do it from the ground up. So clipping plane is a specific object. I've got a layer for it. That needs an E, clipping plane. Okay, for plan. That's confusing. All right. So they're weird. They work even though if they're hidden or on a hidden layer. So you've got to actually take the clipping plane and look at its properties and make sure it's working in the right view. It's under visibility, I believe. It's this button here, add clipping plane. And it's like drawing any kind of shape. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. And this one's acting a little odd on me, so I'm going to do it in the top view. And it's acting weird right now, so I look at it, and it's actually working. If I look at it, if you look at a clipping plane's properties, it has this special button there, and it tells you what views it works in. So right now, if I click on perspective, it works in perspective. Sometimes people think their geometry got deleted or something like that. You just have to be careful about what view it's active in. It's not going to know any better. So it's not only cutting, it's not like contour where it asks you what object, it's applying to the whole model. So if I had, none of my stuff is visible above here at this point. It looks like this shape, but it could be any shape. It's an infinite plane. This is just something for you to manipulate. So I could have made my clipping plane like tiny and it would still work the same way. This is a kind of more visually kind of intuitive to have it the same size as my model here. I'm going to have another view for this. I don't want to run it in my top view. I want to have a plan view. So I'm going to go to this view in my top view here in my viewports layout, and I'm going to split it horizontal. It just makes a copy of it. It's an independent copy now. And I'm going to change it, this one. And I'm going to call it plan. And this is where I'm going to apply it. So now you can see that it updates here in my clipping plane properties, and now plan's an option. I can turn it on plan, I can turn it on perspective. This is going to be your method of determining how high your plan's going to run, because we're not dealing with floors here that were handed to you, right? There's no obvious kind of answer yet. So you're going to know better than anyone where you want to show it. You know, where do we enter the building? These kind of, where are the important spaces? Where do you see a lot of my 5 spaces? That kind of thing is what you're going to be doing when it comes to determining where this is. You're going to manipulate this with any object. You see that little yellow, this little stem here? That's telling you what side's visible. So if I flip that with the flip command, it's going to make everything above it visible. But right now you want it pointing down because we're at top looking down, and I'm going to move my clipping plane to start determining where we're going to put our plan. Okay? How this looks right now in terms of the red outline is a product of settings that I have on my computer. It's individual to whatever settings are on your computer as how clipping planes look. And if you want if you want something to look different or not how it already looks, you can access those by going into your tools underneath options. If you go down to view and display modes, you can see that there's wired, shaded, rendered. Every view has its own settings. I'm in a shaded view right now, so if I look at shaded, anything that's purple has been changed. So in my shaded view settings, I've got options. I could show the fills if I wanted to, but I'm not going to show the fills because it's a little confusing. It's slicing through a couple different things now. But my edge colors, I set that to a solid color. You can have it be the plane's color, solid color. You can change the thicknesses of the whatever that you want to do with the clipping plane to make it more legible for you. That's where you can find it in your display modes. Now, it's not, if I need to change it in wireframe, I got to go to wireframe and change it there too. This is just for the shaded mode. That's where that's at. Let's say that this is where I want to do my plan on. No problem. I've got my topo lines okay. Maybe, no, this looks good, and I'll do the make 2D from this one. I can do it right from my plan view. Make sure I'm not leaving anything behind. Nope, you got everything. For my object to draw, I'm going to pick everything I can see here. You don't have to worry about the clipping plane. It won't pick it. I actually don't need this base down here for anything, so I'm going to deselect that. It's thinking. All right. We don't want hidden lines on this one. All right. So this is my plan view. Let's kind of take a look at how this is set up. Couple things to kind of point out on this one. The process is going to be very similar. When I go down to my drawings, again, I've got that make 2D layer. First move is to change it. I'm going to call it drawings plan. So that later when I do section stuff, and make 2D doesn't dump a bunch of stuff into this layer that and then I have to later try to sort out. There's things that I want visible in the drawings that are different than the two. Mine is kind of simple because I did cut a bigger chunk out than I did last time, so my topo lines don't run as far around. I've got some things that I've included here to help you crop your sections later on. But I can also use that, I can copy one of these guys to use to finish my drawing that I've got here. So I just made a copy of one of these. Because I decided not to cut through that box, my border didn't show up, this little rectangle on the right-hand side. In retrospect, I would cut through that just to give me that. But, you know, just so you kind of know, your drawing is running full bleed like that. So you want that kind of border there to kind of register. But 6 on one end, half dozen the other, you're getting the same kind of stuff. With the one thing that's a little bit different with this one, if I expand this down here, is you'll notice that clipping planes becomes its own layer. So the good thing about the Make 2D in Rhino 5 is that you can do clipping plane Make 2D and it puts stuff on new layers. It's a separate layer. So if I click that, it's showing me exactly what got sliced through with the clipping plane. That's huge because now I don't have to sit there and double check and say, is this cutting, is this not cutting, because your geometry is going to get very complicated very quickly, and you don't want to be wondering if it's cutting through this or not. It's a lot of guesswork that you don't want to worry about. Mine is also very simple now, and it just happens that the bottom of it is a one big surface, so I should have things like interior curves and things that I can see down into in my model. And it just happens that with the angle of how my model is in plan view, you can see it here. It's just so big you don't see it. But normally you're going to have those edges, and we want to see those edges as well. They're going to be part of the drawing. Does that make sense what I'm saying on that one? It's just dumb luck that I've got a really flat, boring bottom right now. It's because I haven't done any partitions on it. So I'm going to go back to my top view. First thing I want to do with these clipping planes in any drawings that have them, I think a good idea to do is to take them and put them up top. So I'm just using this layer arrow and I'm putting them at the top of that visible layer. And if I look at them, I'm going to make them all a color that's a little bit different. I pick all the layers at the same time, I can change their colors. And it actually cut through that as well. That's part of that layer down in there. And it also should have cut through here, so let me see where it put this one. Top poly surface, okay. Aha, all right. So there should also be some ones here because it cut through the land at that spot, but I can use curve boolean to make a new curve on that layer up here. So on this clipping planes layer, that's going to be my top layer. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of anything that's inside my cut planes. So that means any little curves like this, which is actually showing me the inside of the walls and things like that. That goes, I want that gone. And luckily it gets sliced up because that's how the drawing works. If I had had any little parts of my topography or anything showing underneath, I would get rid of that too over in this area. I want to take these and use a curve boolean to kind of make closed curves. So I'm on this layer and I go to curve boolean. And I'll select these curves here, and I'll say delete input, just the used ones. So the ones that I actually use, it'll delete the open curves. I want one big one here for where my stuff is getting cut through, but it looks like it's, I missed that line there to do it. So I got to make sure that I want that one. That's the slice that's coming out of my land here. So that's this dark area right there. I want one closed curve for that. I can do it, an easy fill. But it actually, it gave me this kind of, that's more of my model going into it, right? That's the visible side of my model. So I'm leaving that the way it is. And that gives me that boundary that I want. So that's that one right there. It got rid of the loose ones there, and then I'm going to do the same for in here to just kind of make sure that they're closed curves. And I'll say delete input used. And this one I'll say none. And what that's going to do, it's just going to give me 4 closed curves right there. The way that my model works out, this is just a ridge that happens flat down in my surface. This is talking about right here. My topo lines are telling me that's happening. That's kind of more of a byproduct of surfaces in Rhino. I'm going to get rid of that curve. So if you have a curve like that where the topo line is actually showing that, chuck it. I'm going to leave this because this is more like a cliff. The topo lines aren't lining up. It's a drop off. So I'm just going to leave that. That's actually showing me why there's, if I got rid of that, these topo lines wouldn't make any sense. So I've actually got pretty close. The one thing that I want to do is I want to create 2 new layers. I want to do, and I want to do them actually in my plan drawing. And it's going to be called interior fills. And one called interior curves. All right. Interior fills is going to go towards the bottom of my drawing. Interior curves is going to go right above it. Interior fills is what's going to let me differentiate things that are sliced that I can see into versus things that are just cut through. So I've got 2 curves there that are interior fills, and I've also got the big one that's an interior fill. So as far as we're concerned, it's anything that's going to be black is an interior fill. That right now is on the same layer as things that are just getting cut through. So I'm putting it on a separate layer, and I'm putting it at the bottom so that later on, if I have stuff going on inside my building, I can put lines, white lines on top of it. So we look in the section drawing, that's how that's constructed. And so the section is going to do the same thing. We in this case, same thing, right? We isolate those 3 interior fills, put them at the bottom, and then we can put our entourage and our curves right on top of it and not worry about blocking that info. So that's the one little manual thing you do have to do, is you have to kind of do that separation in Rhino. So I've put those on that layer. If I had those little curves or anything happening in here, that's where I would put them on that layer, interior curves. Okay, so I should have, just do my double check on my list here, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, I got everything. So this thing just needs to get scaled. I don't have to do any guesswork on this one. I know that it's twice as big as my drawings, so I just say 0.5. I'm going to move it over to plan views right there. And since this is the only one of its kind, I'm going to export it. Don't change the scale. All right, back in Illustrator. Give myself a save as. You definitely should have saved by now. I'm lucky it didn't crash. This thing's been crashing a lot. Save, 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 save. I can't say it enough on Illustrator. It'll burn you. I don't have to tell you guys. I'm sure you've been there by now. All right. I'm going to open that file. Demo plan. This is going to be like same old deal. Do a master layer. I'm going to call it creatively plan. Zoom out, seeing where it dropped off my drawing for me. It's over there somewhere. Bring it over where I can see it. Looks like I forgot to change the cut plane layer. That's fine. I can just do it here. If it's bothering me, I can grab them and do them here. Or I could wait until I drop them off in there. It's not going to matter. As far as organization goes, you never know how it's going to shuffle it up. My clipping planes want to be exactly opposite The interior fills are down here. My frame is at the bottom. Looks like it brought that old big frame that I brought with it, so I'm going to delete that. Interior fills. If I had interior curves didn't come in because I ran it and it was empty, but that would go above here. I've got my massing volume, and I've got my offsets. Those look good there. My contours are there. That's the top poly surface. So that's showing me the actual poly surface edges. So this thing is good to go. This is going in the template. Drag it into the master layer. Copy everything. Paste it in. Plan's going to come up at the top. I'm dragging it into the drawings layer. Plans is 1, 2, 3, 4 over. 4 over. Okay. I know this freaked me out in Illustrator, that the fact that like layer colors are different than the object colors that are on that layer. Don't let that bother you that when I pick this stuff, the red highlights come up. And I'm like, oh, this is supposed to be black. It's just I have no idea why it does that. Okay. Never mind. This thing just is now a matter of line weights. I've actually set it up everything pretty well. When you look at your plan view, it looks like a mess right now. And your section views down here in your graphic scales, that's because right now they're all turned on. Those are already done. You go in, you go to keys and scales under graphic scales, and you turn off the 2 layers that aren't your drawing layers. So half the size, right? What's my model? Quarter. What's my drawings? Eighth, right? So half is going to go to a quarter. Quarter is going to go to an eighth. 3/16 is going to go to 3/32. So I'm going to turn off the other 2. Mine's the middle of it, right? Those are all the graphic. So all the graphic scales are done for the other 6 drawings now. They're all on the same layer, so those are done. The projection's already done for my plan view. The line weights are not done, so I look at my line weights. I'm going to do my plan. I've got my clipping planes. Those are going to be black. Those are going to be 2 points. My top poly surface, oh, that's the visible like little ridge line I've got there. I'm going to leave that at 1. My contours, I'm going to kind of tuck away. I'm going to do that at a quarter, and I'm going to use our gray value for that at 204. They're going to be darker when they print out, and I don't want them to, there's going to be a lot of them, so I don't want them to be too dark. Sorry, Borgia, I know. But. Massing volumes. Result. That's the stuff going through my clipping plane. That's fine at 1. That's fine at 1 too. My interior fills, those are going to be black. And because I went longer into a weirder part of my model, I've got some kind of deviations that happen with the projection and the wall thickness, right? We're curving something like this, but we're still slicing through it here. So that's a normal thing if this is a consistent thickness on a wall. That's something that's going to happen with angled walls. It's something you might not be 100% used to seeing. That's it. This is a very kind of dark and ominous drawing. I didn't think about it until I sliced it down. Hey man, it's showing a lot of in my interior. So again, I kind of check back, make sure I'm not missing anything. We got everything here. The graphic scale is what it is. These things are meant to sit on top of black or white. That's why we use the colors that we do. And the same thing with the plan view. The thing with that is just make sure all your keys and stuff are at the top layer like they are right now. Everything will sit on top of it from there. And that's it. That's the planned drawing. Yours is going to be cooler than mine because you're going to have stuff going on in it, but mine, this is that convention, there's the steps. So 2 out of 3 down. Can I get another break? And then we'll do the other one. The other one will be a lot similar and probably go a lot faster. It's just a little bit different. It's the setup that's a little bit different. Thanks, guys. Marathon, not our sprint. Between the plan and the section is kind of the setup in Rhino, because there's multiple ones, and it's not automatically going to line up to something like our top view. It's got different angles based on our orbit. So because of that, we're going to do the section tools command to manage them and set those up. So just like we made a plan view just for the section where that clipping plane's active, and we can kind of keep that hanging out there and still have a good top view, we want to have separate views for each section. I'm going to take my front view and split it in order to give myself a section, but I can do this with any view that I've got, any kind of orthogonal view, and I'm just making myself an extra viewport. So I'm doing another split of the viewport, and I'm going to do my 4th section. So I'm going to go to those viewport properties, and I'm going to call it section 4, and it's at 9 o'clock, so I'm just going to say, give myself a little reminder of that for 9 o'clock there. And what I would keep doing is for the other 4 sections, just keep splitting it up and renaming it until I've got, section 1 through 3, and then section 5. I've got 5 new viewports. You can also, once you make these new viewports, if that way you're not worried about closing them by mistake, is you can go to your named views and save them. So if I go to my little camera icon here, I've got some older ones saved that I can get rid of. I've got some ones like back, bottom, and left that I don't have open right now, but if I ever need them, I can have there. And I'm going to save this view, and I would go and save the other section views as well, so in case I close it by mistake. So now I'm going to do a section. I'm going to go, the things that we're going to cut up are going to be, so I'm going to go to my clipping plane here and look at its properties. I'm going to turn it off for my perspective view so I can see all my stuff again. And I'm going to go to my layer, and I'm going to hide the clipping plane. Under the drawing setup layer here, I could turn off the plan stuff because I'm not working on my plan anymore. I'm going to need my orbit dial, this one, and it might help to have some of the tags to kind of remind me of where I'm going to cut it. So, and the one in case here is going to be number 9. That's just kind of a reminder for me. But this is the geometry that I'm going to cut. I want to make sure I've got the poly surfaces that have the thickness on them, just like in the plane. I'm going to slice through those so it's the same geometry, and we're just adding the orbits. We're kind of going to use those as a reference so we can get the vector of the light coming through the way that we want it in the drawing there. Go back and set up my section. Section tools, I'm going to do create. Objects to section, I'm going to pick these objects. It's not going to pick the curves. That's fine. It won't slice through a curve because it doesn't know how to draw it. Some, things like if you run like the intersect tool or the section tool, it'll make a point where it hits a curve. But the section tools is trying to not cut through curves. It only cares about surfaces and solid. But we will have a clipped view that we can do a make 2D of that will give us the information we need. So this is okay. We've got some options up here. I'm going to, the name, yours is going to probably be something different. Section name, this is the beginning name, section. I'm going to do a start index. Since this is going to be my 4th section, I'm going to change this number to 4. If I were to start at 1, obviously 1. Solid mode, I'm going to turn to none. What solid mode does is in the section view, if you have it set to surfaces or hatches, it draws surfaces or hatches where things are being sliced through. But since we're slicing through so many stuff, it would just make a big surface or hatch across our whole model. And it would block everything behind it, so we wouldn't be able to see inside our space anymore. So that's why I'm turning it to no. But if you're doing stuff on your own later on and you're cutting through something solid, it's a nice kind of tool to give you a clean inside that if you don't want anything on the inside. These other options I'm leaving okay. Arrow scales 1, that kind of stuff. So I said okay. I skipped a part, so let me go back. Pick objects, I'm rerunning the command. I didn't change my axis. The first thing is direction axis, and by default it wants to be an X. So I'm going to do the third option, which is pick. So I'm going to kind of trail my intersection here. So I've got my nexus point, so it's going to be from this point out to number 9. I'll get an end snap at the end of that spoke, and that will give me the right angle for my section. Because I'm in the top view, it'll still just be a slice in space, but this will give me the angle. So it disappears, but all that did was set the angle. So now I say, okay, these options are all right, and now I actually place the section. You can see now it's lined up at the right spot. So I've actually got to put it. At this point, all I've done is pick the direction, so I could do multiple sections if they were aligned, but they're not, so I'm just going to do one. You want to make sure that the angles are going the right way. Okay, so we said that mine are going clockwise, so they would be going to the right, they turn to the left, and then go back to the right again. So if I look into my back to my section markers, my section 4 is going to go off to my right. So that's not what it is in Rhino. I'm going to hit the flip option to flip it the other way. Now my arrows are going to the right. Now I'm going to drop this section. I'm going to snap to the nexus point, and then I'm done. You can see it's giving me a tag there. So I'm not going to do another one, so I hit enter to get out of the command. So you can see in perspective that your section is live. It's hanging out there. Section tools is putting it down here on a locked layer. I think it reset my solid option. Let's look at my history. Let's see. Replace. Surfaces. Reset it on me. Okay, so be careful that it wants to keep resetting it to surfaces, and that's why I've got those interior surfaces in there, which is kind of extra stuff that I don't want. So I'm just going to redo the command, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to change my index x to 4, solid, none. Pick my direction, go to the top view. That's going to be the same. Still going off to the right, that's good. Okay, that looks better. It doesn't have that extra information. So that's there. In order to view it and get a 3D section, you know, remember when you guys did your contour or your waffle structure, if I just wanted that flat section, I could just lay it out right now, and I'd just get that section, but it would only be the yellow stuff. We need to see what's behind it. So there's another good command. It's in section tools. That's why we made this extra viewport. Right now it's just this viewport, but I'm going to change it in the section tools. It's called view, clip view C-plane, and what it does is it sets a viewport to a section that you've got. So it's asking me for a section. I'm going to pick this section 4 here and hit enter. And what viewport to enable it? I'm going to pick my section 04 viewport. Boom. So whatever that odd angle is or anything like that, now you're lined up with that, right? Instead of manually doing this, this saves a lot of time. So you've got 4 other viewports, right? Just do it again. Do this with your other 4 sections, have those other viewports hanging out there, and once you line up those sections, you'll have a viewport for each one. You could do this tonight, and whenever you make changes in your model, you can just kind of check in and see how it affects your model in all those sections. You'll know exactly how it affects all your drawings. These sections will just hang out there, and they'll show you this. This acts just like a clipping plane, and when you do the Make 2D, your output is just like a clipping plane. It puts the cut stuff on a clipping plane layer, just like it did for our plans. It behaves the same way. You will see that it doesn't show us, right, the clipping plane the way that the other one did. But if you wanted that, you could make that. Also, we didn't pick our orbit, but we can see here, and with curves it's tricky in terms of, like, I've done this a couple times, and sometimes this number 9 shows up and sometimes it doesn't. But now I know where it's going to be, and there's no guarantee it's going to show up when I actually do the Make 2D too. But I know this is where it's supposed to be. So right now I know exactly what my line's supposed to be. I've got those points in there, so I'm going to do a select point and get rid of those things. All right, so if I wanted to show a clipping plane, I could just run that clipping plane command that's in visibilities here. And you can kind of see what's going on with your section at that point. So let's get the drawing out. I'm going to go to my section 04, do a Make 2D. For my things to draw, I'm going to pick everything. Yeah, exactly. Whenever you start introducing thicknesses or anything like that, it's going to start doing it. All right, so show hidden lines is still unchecked. That's good. Hit OK. Okay. Here's my section view. You're going to see this. I think it's a product of it being on a skewed viewport. You see how your gumball is like in a weird orientation? If you just click the little circle there and say reset gumball, it'll reset it to your current view, and it'll kind of clean that up. So this time the spoke that the spoke in question, the number 9 spoke, didn't come through. But with this as a guide, you can kind of see what happens, right? This orbit's going through space, and it's getting cut off in that little ribbon part here by the plane. So it's cutting it off at 9 here, and it's cutting it off in between 7 and 6 here, and that's what's showing up in my drawing. So I know that it's supposed to be this one. That's the number 9 spoke. It connects to the end there. So what I'm going to do is, my second thing I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to drawings sections, because I'm going to keep doing this and put everything, I'm going to keep doing the Make 2D for all of my sections. And underneath there, I'm going to give it the new layers, I'm going to give it the same interior fills. I'm going to give it the same interior curves. And I'm also going to give it a layer called light vector. And that's going to go up at the top of my drawing. And my fills and curves can hang out down there for now. And on that layer, I'm going to make it a different color just so it kind of stands out. I'm just going to draw that missing spoke in there. Make this layer active. Okay. So this is a means to an end. This is kind of orienting me in space and letting me know that this is the one I'm concerned about at this point. At this scale, these other ones kind of get a little bit busy, so what we're going to do is not use those in the actual drawing. When it comes to that, I go and I find those. Those are in my visible. Let's see, orbital dial, they're in here. Hour, spokes, and scaled orbit. That orbit's way out there beyond the scope of my drawing anyway, so I'm going to grab both of those layers and delete those. Right, you want to start getting into kind of the drawing layer management part of it at this point. Very similar to the plan view. I go to my clipping planes, visible layer. I'm moving that up to the top. I'm picking everything that goes into that, so that runs all the way down to there. Does it? We'll find out. Make those a different color. Looks like there's some more. Oh wow, it's not showing up for you guys, huh? You're missing one of the RGBs, huh? You're missing the R. Thanks for saying something, I can't see it. The good thing is it'll be on the video, so. Yeah, so I don't know how long it's been going, so when I said it was red, you just have to believe me it was red. I wasn't like making it up to tease you guys. I had no idea. Okay, so let's take a look and see. Yeah, that stuff doesn't belong there. So we got this. Looks like it's hitting one more thing. We'll figure it out. You might get every once in a while some kind of geometry that's not quite showing up. Sometimes it has to do with the landscape. It'll show up on like a separate layer, but we know that this is where our landscape's coming. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start cleaning up the stuff that's inside. Anything that's inside my cut walls, so anything that goes in between. This is why I like turning this layer a different color, because the minute I see something in between those, and this is supposed to be on that layer too, that I can just automatically get rid of it. So, not that one. I need a little bit of noise in here. That one, and a couple more. So we've got it kind of cutting through here, and we've also got our land that's getting cut through as well. Nice clipping plane should be showing up on that one. Don't know what. Kind of goes down here. So all this stuff shouldn't be visible either. Because our object right now is totally sliced open, it doesn't know the difference between seeing inside our object and seeing inside our landscape. But we've got this kind of curve here. So I want to go back to the drawing itself. And this landscape line is coming in there, so I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And my landscape comes up to that line right there. And this is kind of going underneath the landscape as well. So that's gone. This is sitting on top of the landscape. This is sitting inside, so that's good. This is sitting, going and then going and falling backwards into space. That's fine. This is an odd little chunk of my geometry hanging off there, so it's getting cut. I'm going to let that go. And we're getting there. We do need something to talk about our landscape. Before I do that, I'm going to take a look at what's going on. So we've got these 4 cropping boxes here, because when you take out different slices of that box, you're not going to get 20 by width anymore. You're going to get these weird ones that are going to be longer unless you're dead on some of them. So it's going to be a drawing decision that you make on how this thing is going to get cropped. I would err on trying to include as much cut geometry as possible. So one way to kind of look at that is to realize that my section gets cut off to the left-hand side, and I'm looking back on it on the right-hand side. So I want to include everything. I'm going to justify this drawing to the left side, and I'm going to crop off the other stuff. So this is looking back into my box. I don't need that. I can trim off anything that's outside of this boundary by using that as a cutting object and slicing through there. I don't know why it's not working. There he goes. A little picky. There we go. I think it's the only stuff. I can trim off the light, and this stuff is out of there. So this becomes way more manageable. Oh, another thing is that I don't want to penetrate the walls with the light either, and this is also going to help me break up my arrows so that there's something legible. So I want to do this definitely now. Don't wait until Illustrator to play around with it, because then you got to make multiple copies of one curve, and it's really a mess. At this point, you can just trim.
What did you say about that black line right there?
Which one? This one?
Yeah, it's either red. To the right looks good. Down, down, up, left.
This one?
Yeah.
This one's got to go too. I missed it. So I want to use these as cutting objects, and I don't want to use this as a cutting object. So I'm going to trim out. Oh, didn't want to use that either. Let's go back. Pick too much stuff. So before I do that, I'll get rid of that guy. Good call. Yep. I need you gum guys with your eyes. Better? Okay, I think we got it. Trim. So that's going through 3 walls. So I've broken that into those parts there. So that's good. This is cropped. I still need a bounding line for my land, so I'm going to go into this clipping plane layer and use our curve boolean command. Run it. Delete input, none. Combine regions, no. That's what I want. That's where the land is right there. That's easier to do now than later on. I could have done it later on, and with all the little pieces, and I could have used combined regions, yes, and pieced them up and got rid of it. It's going to give you the same results. It's whatever you're comfortable with. That gives me this new curve, right? So, same deal when it comes to the interior fills. I've already got this selected. I'm going to pick this one and add it to that layer. So that's going to be an interior fill. If these aren't joined, I can either run the curve boolean and join them up that way. I can also say select object layers. Deselect a couple things here. And these are touching, so I'm not going to use these or that. But for the other things here, the things that aren't touching, I can just run the join command, and that's going to turn it into 5 closed curves. And then I just do a bounding box around these curves here. And if I was paying more attention or not rushing, I would just lock those other layers. So a closed curve, another closed curve. When I type in select closed curve, I can do like a quick check and it tells me what's closed and not. And this is all the stuff that I want, so should be ready to go. I've got my clipping plane stuff, I've got my light coming through, I've got stuff in the background. Yeah, my people are going to come in Illustrator. Nice and cropped. Oh yeah, got to scale it. Let's take it. Move it. This is section 4. Scale. That's my origin point. And say 0.5. Drawing sections. So I would do the other ones the same way. Do them all 5 sections. Run that same series of kind of cleaning up and editing. Drop them all in there, and then do your export by grabbing them all and running the export out. Just do it all in one step. Same amount of layers, but I'm going to grab them. Grab a boundary to go with it, and export. Go back in Illustrator. So when I look at my sections here, I've got these section guides that are going on. There's 2 things I need to do. The black line, there's a set of black lines and a set of gray lines on these guides, and they're overlapping a little bit here when I look at the section guides here. That's the actual guides. We don't want those. We want under keys and scales, we've got these section keys. There's 5 of them, 5 of these little keys. So I'm going to go to the 4th one down here. These are just, there's a million little layers just because they're little hands on the clock that you can pick by number. So you don't have to visually kind of look and turn things off and stuff. You could just do them kind of quick. So this is number 4. My current section I said was 9 o'clock, right? So I just turn off the other ones. And then on the included sections, when I turn those on, I've got these. This actually tells me what sections are available in my entire presentation. And I had done sections 6 through 10. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And just turn the other ones off. So those are going to be the same for the 5. And then my active section, looks like I left one on up there in my current sections. That one. That's how those work. The clock, basically, right? Simple. Just you know what sections you've got. Turn the other ones off. So that's for section 4. The graphic scale was already taken care of. We did that when we did our plans. So I'm going to go open my final drawing here. Demo sections. So we did most of our work just like before, but definitely in this case we did most of it in Rhino. We find the magic spot, decide to drop it off, and looks like it's kind of just keeping the origin over here and using relative coordinates on it. Again, look at my clipping planes and all that stuff. I can make it black, or do it later. Okay. Same process, but we're going to have all 5 here. So we're going to make a layer called sections. Put it in there. Sections. Close that stuff up first. We want the entourage layer on top of all the other drawings. Plans closed up. All right, take a look intersections. Clipping planes up front. That's our volume, so we'll put the clipping planes above that. Frames at the bottom. It's visible lines, put that up top. Split volume, result offsets, massing volumes. So we're looking for the fills. But I forgot to change the in Rhino. But we've got the 3-1, so we can do it here. Unfortunately, that's not a big one. I forgot to change the interior curves and interior fills that are on there. Easier to do it in Rhino, back the way we did in plans, but I'm not going to backtrack. So I'm going to grab the objects. There's not a ton of them in this case, but these are the ones that are happening inside my building, and I look at that, and this is why I hate doing this kind of stuff in Illustrator, because they got to track all that stuff down. This one's not that bad though. It's that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. I'm going to want a new layer for those. So the one step I skipped is costing me a couple steps on this one. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Looks like it's all of them. It's all the offset ones. Okay, never mind. I'm just going to change the name of the layer. That works too. These, I know, are not going to know where to be. And that's my 4 curves. So I got the big one, the big landscape one that's hanging out there somewhere. Problem is in Illustrator, grabbing the right one was always a pain. I think I got it there. It's that one there. Nope. That's the frame. Oh boy, did I totally leave that guy behind? Yeah, I did. Oh well. Let's do these. Goes down the bottom. This goes above it. And we'll just do everything but the one land part. We'll leave that as white and fill it in as black later. So we've got our clipping planes for everything that's getting sliced up. These kind of objects, it's going to be 2 again. That one is not going to be important because we're going to fill it in with the black with the fill. We've got the clipping planes for the actual walls. That's 2. We've got the visible lines, we're going to leave that as 1. That's the things that are going back in space and are still visible in our model. Same thing with the landscape, that's 1. The interior curves, those are going to be white. So it changes to 0.5. And let's change my color to white on those. I've left my light behind too somehow. So we're going to go back and have to fetch it. And the interior fills layer, we're changing that to black. So you see that because of the layering, we've got the interior lines that are kind of filled back in there. We just need to go back and get those couple of curves, unfortunately, because I rushed it. I've got something going on with my keys as well. I've got extra scales turned on, so let's check out that. It's in some weird keyboard mode where it's over-selecting everything and turning everything on. All right, so the good thing is when I for some reason this didn't translate and this one didn't translate, these are the things that have a locked place in our model. So instead of trying to fudge it, and I know like it's tempting to try to redraw it in Illustrator, it actually takes longer if you just export just those things as a separate file. I'll just call it missing curves. Okay, so we've got our light vector and we've got our interior fills. Gonna copy those. We've already got an interior fills layer. It might not show up because of our sublayers, but we'll see where it drops it. Paste it in. So now I've got my curved boundary back. When I grab that guy, I'm going to take a look at where it is in Illustrator exactly. It's under interior fill, so I'm just going to take that and drop it into that layer and double check. That has multiple values going on right now for the fill, so I changed that, swap it out. Let's see, grab it, come on, there we go, swap it out. Better. Going into the lights, that's at a light vector. I'll just take that whole layer, drop it into the top of sections. So the last kind of thing for the light vector, that layer is the one that's kind of subject to manipulation on your own. That's the only thing in the whole process where we're actually going to go and pick things individually. They're all going to be the same thickness. So if I pick all of them, I can say, well, they're all going to be 2. But some of them are going to be black and some of them are going to be white based on visibility. So the ones that are outside and up against a white background are going to make black, so it's these 2. And then I've got these 2, and those are going to be white. Okay. On the whole layer, they're going to have arrowheads. So if I look, I can grab that whole layer and go to stroke and say, give me arrowhead 11 is the one we're going to use. And it'll apply those. The convention then is up to you. This one makes kind of no sense because if it's hitting these things and not going through them, they can't be solid anymore, right? So if my kind of claim is that these are translucent going in, I'm going to grab the ones that are translucent and add a dash of 8 to them. And along with that, there's 2 ways to do dashes. I did some testing. It works better to have this method to preserve the exact dash and length on there. There's kind of 2, and this one seems to work better for our project. So there's that one there. So those are there. The light convention stuff makes sense with the dash stuff and all that stuff. If not, we can always talk about that one later. But let's say we got a big people in there. We got to do people. That's our final step. So you've got a layer called entourage. I would say, there's plenty of spots out there. There's plenty of websites that just have it. If you just Google like entourage, realistic entourage, you can always get it if you don't already have a collection of your own. I just grabbed a couple. I just have a bunch of vector ones on hand. So now we go. My keyboard's not acting weird anymore. So I'm going to just go and open one of those and pop them in there. They're going to be the same gray color as everything else is that one gray color. So I'm just going to pick it. Paste it in. I have no idea what size this guy is right now. I'm going to change his color real quick, his fill color here to 204. And this is when I just kind of go and start to see how tall this cat needs to be. He's really tall right now, so I'm going to take him down to about 6 feet. That's about 6 feet right there. And if I want to put him a little further back on my model, maybe I would make him a little smaller than that. You don't want to go too crazy with the perspective and stuff like that. I'm going to put him pretty close to my model, the section plane. So since he's up on the top layer, I can put him by the light like that. That's it. I hope this helps you guys out a lot, and thanks for your patience and all that good stuff.